bastard. Oh, here we go. Look, I'm in a new room. There's Sean.
There's Sean.
There's Dave. Oh, he's the good guy, huh? We like him best. Anyhow, this is Barstools
and Bandtalk. The complete music bucket list.
Yeah, I like the way you said that.
Got a little slap back there going on. I don't know why that is, but anyway,
better now.
So it's interesting that it's not bad.
Okay,
it's not bad. We're nothing if not professional. So it's interesting that oftentimes we overlook the amount of talent that's in our own backyard. I don't know why that is. Dave, we were talking about this today about how, for whatever reason, we sort of think that people from away are bigger and better than us. But we have a gentleman on, very good friend of mine. I've known him for years, who's from our own backyard, that's done some world-class things and worked with world-class people. And it's going to be a great chat because he's done everything from be a musician to be a sound engineer, to being a road manager, to being a musician, to being a concert promoter, to being all kinds of different things. He's worn many hats. It's going to be a great chat.
Yeah, we're excited because, I mean, and Sean and I both, I've known you too, known Mark Horton for a long time. You're going to hear a lot of things that you maybe not known about him. He's a great dad, a great husband, and, you know, he loves the music. So we're going to bring him on, Mr. Mark Horton. Right there.
How's it going, eh?
Hello.
So one of the things, Mark, that we said in our intro, that we often forget that there's, we think about people that are away, that are doing things away, and we forget about talent in our backyard. You would be talent in our backyard because the intro, I said, you know, you were a guitar player who also became a sound tech, who also became a road manager, who also became a concert pro. You do a lot of stuff. You've worn many, many hats. I know you get a timeline and we want to stick to it, but you know, you've done an awful lot.
Yeah, I've bounced around quite a bit for sure. You know, none of it was conscious. It just sort of, you know, I would go one direction and then there'd be a left turn and I'd go somewhere else. And I've been fortunate enough, you know, to be in the music business for, you know, 30 years or whatever now. I haven't really had another job other than working at the Towers department store in Harbor.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a throwback.
Yeah. I started working there when I was 15, I guess, like 1985, end of 1985, as soon as they just built it. You remember when they just built that place?
Yes, sir. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I started working there.
And it's funny because you and I more or less grew up in the same, you know, we grew up in Dartmouth. You were a Cole Harbor guy. I was a Woodlawn guy. Dave was a Woodlawn guy, but never really crossed paths until, you know, I guess a little bit later on. So let's hit your timeline, man. You, again, we all grew up listening to the same people, trying to do the same thing. So yeah, let's hit it.
Well, I mean, I moved here to Dartmouth in 1985. I had lived in Victoria, BC, and Ottawa before that. So, you know, we moved out here. I didn't know anybody, even though I was born in Glasgow, but we like moved away when I was a kid. So I moved back, you know, and I had my two cassettes, Motley Crue, Theater of Pain, and Rat, Invasion of Your Privacy. Those were my, you know, same ones you guys obviously had.
Yep.
And yeah, so I played guitar and started working at the department store, and I met Jeff Roberts there. And he worked in the home entertainment department, you know, where the TVs were and everything, and had these little keyboards, and I hear him playing heart tunes and stuff on the keyboards. So we ended up getting him to join our high school band. And then a couple years later, I started writing I wrote a couple of songs for some song contest. You know, remember they always had those song contests with radio stations back in the late 80s. So I went over and recorded them with Jeff and Chris Palmer, who had been in Runaway. Runaway had recently broken up. Jeff asked Chris to come sing on these two songs, and nothing ever, we didn't win or anything, but that was sort of the genesis of our Cameras in Paris band right there. We started writing together, and ended up recording a cassette, as you did back in the day, like Jack Butler Band and everybody.
Yeah, there you go. Yep.
So cassettes and dubbing them in the, we went to some stereo store in Burnside and we're like furiously dubbing cassettes in there. Yeah. So, yeah. So that was sort of the start of the whole thing.
And so Cameras in Paris, I mean, you guys, so Chris Monroe was part of that band at some point, correct?
Yeah, eventually. I mean, it started off with just Chris and Jeff and I writing. That started off as really just an original project. And then we got some, like we won some contests and different things like that. And we ended up getting this big band together. Like your cousin Seamus Gunn was like Sean, your cousin Seamus was.
Well, that's the funny story. We got to hit that again in a second, but go ahead.
So it was Seamus was playing like second guitar and saxophone, and we had Stacy Brown singing backup vocals, and Dan Kelly on bass, and Dave Fenton, or Fenton Dave, whatever they called him, on drums. So we had this massive 7-piece band, and we did a few showcases, and we ended up playing at the Palace, and we got fired after the second night.
We know what that's like, eh, Dave?
Yeah.
Well, don't know anything about that.
It was brutal. But so, I mean, we decided we should regroup. So we kind of, I'm going to say we fired everybody. We just kind of got rid of everybody and regrouped as the three of us. And then we got Carl Boswick. And so Carl was our first like drummer in the Cameras in Paris that people would remember. So we started going on the road. He had Wayne O'Connor come over and watch us rehearse in Jeff's parents' basement. And he took us, to Corner Brook right after that. And so that was the start of it. That would have been, I don't know, 90 or 91, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then shortly after that, Carl Boswick left to go to school. And then we ended up getting Chris Monroe. And then Chris was there for like, I don't know, 2 years maybe. And then Dave Langeth actually joined the band. And then we wrapped it up in like 94. That was the end of Cameras in Paris, as we know it.
So here's the funny story about my cousin. So Mark and I are playing one night in a band. We're at the Ale House, and we're sitting there on a break. I don't know. I don't remember what we were chit-chatting about, but Mark was talking about something about San Francisco. And I said, oh, yeah, I got a cousin that lives out that way. And he's like, oh, yeah, and we're going back and forth. I said, yeah, my cousin married this guy that used to be part of Lance Armstrong's friggin' biking team. And he's like, what? And I'm like, yeah, what's her name? I said, Odessa Gunn. He starts shaking his head. He was best friends with my cousin Seamus, who I hadn't seen in like 30 years and hadn't talked to. Mark's like, here's his number, friggin' hit him up. So anyway, it was just so funny. And that's just another connection, because Seamus was actually originally from Sydney and moved down here and grew up in Cole Harbour. Now he's in Brockville, Ontario. He's a teacher up there. So
well, he lived
crazy how it works. He's like, knocked my
he lived pretty close to me. And I'd go pick him up. We'd go over to Jeff's parents' place, and we'd sit in the basement and watch movies, and we'd write songs and stuff in the basement.
It's hilarious, man.
Yeah.
That 6 degrees of separation is always so prevalent around here, right?
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so take us back to Cameras in Paris, and wraps up in 94. And what happened next? What did you do next?
So I started a band that with Rick Smith and Dave Langeth and Luke Morris called Saving Grace. It lasted for like maybe half a year, playing like more heavier stuff, like Soundgarden and well, maybe one Soundgarden song, but Stone Temple Pilots and Pearl Jam and some other sort of rock tunes, some Led Zeppelin and stuff. So of course that, when you play songs like that, as you know it, you don't get very many gigs. So that was sort of the end of that shortly, after it started.
I'm sorry, who was singing in that band?
Rick Smith from Afraid Not. Yeah. So he had that sort of high Zeppelin-y kind of voice. So that was fun. I really enjoyed that, playing with Luke and Dave, like, phenomenal rhythm section. So I could just, do whatever and it still would sound good. So then after that, I guess I started doing sound, like in Cameras in Paris. Wayne always sort of the first day when we were setting up the gear, you know, and you guys did the same. We'd travel with gear everywhere we went, a truckload of gear. And I was just like, man, show me how this all works. And so I just ended up learning how everything worked and how to do it. I learned how everything plugged in. And so then after I didn't have a band anymore, I started doing sound. And ended up doing sound for a band that Jeff joined, Souls Road, which was Brad Davidge and Randy Chason and Darcy Weavers. And we were in Corner Brook, and just coincidentally, Chris Palmer was over there too. He had become a salesman in the meat, like after Cams in Paris ended, he became like a traveling meat salesman or something. I can't remember. He had a sales job.
Get your meat here. Get your meat here.
I can't remember the specifics, but he was some sort of salesman. So anyway, he was over there selling meat or whatever. And we were all staying in the band house, and the phone, guys remember the pay phone on the wall in the band house?
Do I ever.
So the payphone rings, and then Chris Palmer answers it. I can hear him, and he's talking to somebody. And he's like, yeah, it sounds pretty good. Blah, blah, blah. You know, he has a little conversation. Turns out it's Wayne O'Connor calling to tell me that he's going to take me out on the road with Ashley McIsaac to do sound. I was like, okay, sure, whatever, man. Wow. So I guess I just turned 26, and I got the call, and I was out, doing Ashley gigs right after that. And so I went from doing sound in bars to, a few months later, we opened up for Melissa Etheridge in all the arenas in Canada. You know, we started out in Victoria, where I had lived a few years, like 10 years before that or whatever. And so the first show was in the old Centennial Arena, where I saw my first concert, which was Quiet Riot and Whitesnake and Kick-Ass.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a thrill. And we came across, and we did the last rock show in the Montreal Forum. And we did a show at the Metro Center. So that was pretty exciting. You know, I was 26, and I went from being a guitar player to doing sound in bars to doing sound in arenas. And then with Ashley, we went all over the place. We went to shortly after that, we went to Sicily, and I was just to say I'm from Dartmouth, and here I'm, in Sicily in a temple, sightseeing in Sicily. It was quite exciting. And then we went to Brazil, and we went all over Europe, and we went to Japan.
Wow.
So it was pretty exciting for like a bunch of Nova Scotia kids to get to do all that in such a short amount of time. And then, that imploded, as everything does. And in the first summer, I guess I was with Ashley in 96, we had opened for the Chieftains, and actually they had been in Sicily too. And then later on, maybe a year later, the tour manager for the Chieftains came out, helped us out as a tour manager, and asked me if I wanted to go out on the next, start working for the Chieftains doing sound. And I was like, well, of course I do. They're a traditional Irish band, but they're world renowned. They had, 6 Grammy Awards. It was quite exciting. So I started working for them. I started off doing sound, and then later on I was their tour manager. And I got to travel all over the world with them and play amazing places like the Royal Albert Hall in London. I got to do sound there, and we did Carnegie Hall. I was there probably 6-8 times at Carnegie Hall, and they would have these amazing special guests like Elvis Costello, like just great. It was a great experience.
Wow.
And the good thing about the Chieftains was that they were old. So their tours were shorter. They would go out for 3 weeks, come home, go out for 3 weeks, then come home for 2 months, off and on like that. So I had lots of time to work with other people, to pick up other gigs in the meantime. So I got to, I ended up out with Nora Jones for, doing a couple of like promo tours with Nora Jones.
Can you tell that story? I remember when you telling me that story, how you met her.
Met Nora?
Yeah.
Well, I met
That was
Nora
a great story.
I met her at the Edmonton Folk Festival. I don't know if that's what you're referring to or not.
I remember you telling me some story about you got a call that you had to go meet somebody. You went to some apartment in New York and you went up and it was Nora Jones. And do you remember that?
No, I don't know. It doesn't ring a bell. But it's not, I'm not saying it's not true. I met Nora the first time at the Edmonton Folk Festival, and she was playing there, and Dan Cleland, who had been working with the Chieftains, who hired me for the Chieftains, was working with Nora at the time. So I just hung out with her backstage one night. It was pretty fun. Yeah, I don't remember what the story.
I remember you were telling me some story about, and maybe I get it mixed up, but
yeah.
And I want to say it was in New York, and you were hanging out with somebody, and they said they wanted you to meet somebody, and you wound up going to their house, and it was some big wig, whomever that you wound up doing sound for.
I'm not sure. That sounds like maybe a couple of stories combined.
Maybe.
I did go to Nora's apartment in New York because I flew down to New York to do sound for her, doing her band, to do this little show at this bar in Soho called The Living Room. It's very small. It was like a friends and family show. And then I just helped them get their gear back into her apartment. Like, they had no crew or anything. It was just famous Nora and her band. And I just helped them bring gear up to her apartment.
See, there was. You were in Nora Jones' apartment. I remember that. So anyway,
yeah.
Thank you for the closure.
Well, yeah.
Whatever, Ryan. So what year is this now going to be?
Well, the Nora stuff would be in the, let's say, like early to mid 2000s.
So you learned a lot of shit in that period of time. Then, if you're talking from '96 to 2000, you went from
Sure.
the bars to Carnegie Hall. That's a big deal, brother.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I was with the Chieftains for the better part of 11 years. So, yeah, I started with them. It would have been like, say, January '98 that I started with them. And then the last run of shows I did with them was in the summer of 2009.
Okay.
Yeah. So the last big tour I did with them would have been in 2008, but I did some 2 weeks with them in 2009. Yeah. So, I mean, I learned a lot. I got to do a lot of exciting things. Got to meet a lot of great people. So, also in that same time period, I ended up working for Rufus Wainwright, and a lot of the connections come through management things. Like the Chieftains management was trying to become Rufus Wainwright's manager, and so they wanted to have sort of someone who was on their team sent out that they trusted. So they sent me out with them, and it was quite, it was interesting. It was really a different scene for me, but it was really exciting, and it was like wonderful music and like a super talented band. And but what ended up happening is he didn't go with that management. He ended up not signing with them. But then on his next big tour, he actually called me to be the tour manager. So I ended up getting the gig with them, and the management didn't. So that was sort of a nice.
So dumb it down for me a little bit. What does a tour manager do?
A tour manager is hired by the artist to be their boss. You're in charge of sort of everything, like logistics, transportation, hotels. You're basically the boss of the tour. Now, on really big tours, you'll have like production managers and stage managers, because there's just too much to do.
Right.
But a lot of times, the tour manager just takes care of everything. And I found I had the right kind of organizational mindset that worked as a tour manager. People seem to like me, and I get hired back, and it was a great experience. So a lot of times later on in my touring career, I wouldn't be doing sound or any sort of technical work. It would be just sort of running the show, which I liked. I liked being the boss.
Yeah. I hear you. Well, and the thing is too, and it's funny because, you and Andy DeVoe are two local guys. I put you guys kind of in the same category in that, I know a lot of people in the industry, as you do, And some of them like to drop names like crazy. With you guys, it's more like pulling teeth. They get a story. You don't do it to kind of make yourself the center of the room. You do it if you're asked. And I certainly always appreciate that because it's fun to hear. But you know how you get around people, and it's just like they want the whole friggin' world that they knew that, and it's kind of like whatever. But you and Andy are both very much like that, and I think you and he both kind of, I think, keep getting calls because you kind of have almost the same mannerisms.
Well, Andy and I, early on, actually used to end up like subbing out gigs for each other. Even before I knew Andy, before I'd even met Andy, we were subbing gigs for. I used to this band Slancheva from Cape Breton, the Bear McNeil's younger brothers and some others, Lisa McNeil and them. They I would go out and do shows with them. I loved working with those guys. And then when I couldn't do it because I was out with the Chieftains or someone else, then Andy would do it. And Andy had been out with Natalie McMaster, and he had some reason he couldn't go out, so he called me. I'd never even met him before, but we trusted each other because we had the same sort of thing going on. So I ended up going out on tour with Natalie McMaster for a little while. And, you know, it was fun.
It's funny. The first time I saw Andy in probably 3 or 4 years was at the Bedford 4-pad there last winter.
Oh yeah.
Sit down with him and his wife, and all he wanted to do was do what every parent has done to me for 16 years, talk about how his kid got screwed in tryouts. Yeah. And I was just like, no, I just want to talk to Andy about music. But I understand it. But I throw that out there only because, you know, A, another Nova Scotian guy, and B, you know, it's always blown me away on the tech side and on that side of things, how so many people from here get to work with so many world-class acts. And is it because you guys are all good guys? Why is that?
I think a lot of it is personality for sure. You know, you could be the best at anything, but if you're not a good hang, then you're not going to get the gig. And by good hang, I don't necessarily mean you're, you know, doing tequila shots, you know, all night, every night, but just you're good to be around, and, you know, you get the job done without creating too many problems for people.
It makes sense because right now, the folks that we've talked to here, by and large, and Sean and I have witnessed this ourselves, is that Maritimers seem to have that spirit, you know what I mean? The spirit of caring, of authenticity, that they have a good work ethic, they're going to get the job done, whatever the cost, they're going to get it done. And to Sean's point, they're not assholes. You know what I mean? There's someone you can call and depend on, and they're going to be there for you, you know?
Well, I think the people from here feel like they have to work harder than the people from Ontario, because you know, we don't have the population, so we don't have as much going on. So you do have to work a little harder, and you do have to make sure that if you want to be in the industry, you have to be able to go away, because that's the only way to, you know, to make a living as a you know, like a technician, you know, like a high level technician, is you have to go on tour. And I mean, there are tons of guys from here that are out on humongous tours right now, but they're doing different jobs. Like you might not even know. Like there are the guys, like the lighting, the dimmer techs, you know, so they're back there making sure the lighting dimmers are operating properly, or they're working on the motors, or, you know, different things. But there are tons of guys from here.
Wow. Well, and, you know, and that's a great point. You know, check your ego at the door. Everybody doesn't get to be the front house engineer. Some guys need to be the dimmer guys, and some guys need to be the monitor guys, the drum techs. And
there are a lot of important roles on a tour, especially, you know, the bigger the tour. If you're playing in a stadium, like, you know, that guy who's watching the dimmers is pretty important. If the whole rack of dimmers overheats and they lose half the lighting rig, then, you know, somebody's going to get fired.
Well, and back to what Dave was talking about, the Maritime Connection. One of the coolest guys, I remember you were having a birthday party. It was either a birthday party or Christmas thing at your house. I think it was one off of Caldwell Road. And you invited us over. So we go and we hang out and met Brad Davidge. It was the first time I met Brad. Oh, yeah. And known Brad ever since. And so guys like that, it's funny. You and I kind of have the same. I remember many a conversation you and I had at the Portland Estates friggin' elementary school parking lot about, you know, this person's an idiot or that person's not an idiot. Like you and I kind of have that same sort of, I guess, feel for people.
Yeah.
Brad's one of those guys, man, that every time you see him, he's the same, right? And just one of those cool guys I get to meet from, hanging out with him. He's just been a great guy.
He's a great guy. He has a sort of a big, happy personality.
Yeah.
So he's fun to be around. And he's a super guitar player and a super singer as well.
He's a monster. He told one of the funniest stories because he got into coaching hockey out in Tassa, and he had dealt with a lot of the parents. And so I saw him at the rink one night. I said, Brad, how's it going? And he goes, Sean, I got to tell you, my son was in a concert last night. He didn't get a solo, so I went up and I started yelling at the conductor. And what he was talking about was all the parents barking about hockey. And I was just like, only Brad Davidge would drop something on me like that. It was just friggin' hilarious. But so to stick on the same timeline, because I know you did the Chieftains, and I remember when you were doing that, you were always trying to find something local because you were kind of traveling was maybe getting a little longer in the tooth. Yeah. And you did find something local, which wasn't local. What was the next thing that you did after that?
Well, the next thing I did was Sum 41, which was,
right.
I'm not even sure how that came about, to be honest with you, but I got a call to go out with Sum 41, and it created a conflict with the Chieftains, which sort of spelled my demise as a full-time Chieftains person. But so I ended up going out with Sum 41, and I mean, it was crazy, but I really enjoyed it. I really liked the guys, and I found it very exciting.
I'm going to tell you right now, that was my favorite. Well, Iron Maiden Twisted Sister back in 1984, probably my favorite concert. Second favorite, Sum 41. I couldn't believe the energy of those guys consistently for an hour and a half. Couldn't believe it. Yeah,
it's amazing. Yeah, I was the tour manager on with that. So I went out. I did. I'm trying to. It's so blurry, so many years and so many gigs. But what happened, I guess, is they had a guy who was hired to do a whole run, and then all of a sudden he had a conflict. Something happened. I don't know. I don't remember what it was. And so I got the call to come in and sort of cover for the first part of this tour, the first 3 weeks or whatever it was, 3 or 4 weeks. And then I had to go, and but I got along with the guys great. Like, we really had just a great rapport, and they were saying, we'd keep you. They wanted to keep me on, but they'd already promised this guy, and they didn't want to go back on their promise. So the last night I was in Chicago, and Avril Lavigne had been there for a couple of days, which was another weird thing all on itself. But those guys ended up crowd surfing me down in the bus, like all the way down to the front of the bus. That's how they said goodbye to me when it was time for the bus to leave. What's going on? That was fun.
So when you're out there, and I should know this, but I'm drawing a blank. But so you're tour manager. So are you doing front house at some point?
No,
too, or you're strictly...
No, I'm not doing any technical stuff at all with them. I'm just running the show.
Okay, so I know Mark Horton really well. So when Mark Horton is tour managing and he's hearing something that's coming out of the front house, and he's not the front house guy, but he's a tour manager, how does he handle that?
Yeah, it depends. I mean, I would say something if I thought it needed to be said, for sure. I mean, I've fired people because they weren't doing a good job. Luckily, with Sum 41, the front house guy they had was awesome. He had done a tour with Bruce Springsteen and been out on some Van Halen tours. So it sounded amazing. Like, every show sounded amazing. Loud, like rip your head off loud, but it always sounded great. So so that was, I had no problems there. And then they were on in-ears, but they were a great rock band. They had Marshalls like ripping, and it was a real rock show, and a lot of fun. And then afterwards there were a lot of broken hotel rooms and stuff. I'd have to sometimes when we were checking out of a hotel, I'd have to go to the front desk, say, look, I know there's some damage in room like 341 or whatever. Just give me a call. Let me know how much it's going to cost, and put it on this credit card. It's a lot of that kind of stuff going on. So,
Well, and it's funny you mentioned that because I remember, I think you were in your new gig and you had called me up. Was it Florida Georgia line was in town?
yeah.
And you're like, the boys want to go somewhere after the show. Can you call Micho Corey and see if they can go to the Palace or the Ale House or whatever? Yeah, sure, no problem. And your line was, they're going to spend a ton of money. Just tell them they're going to spend all this money. No problem. So I call Micho. Next day he calls me. They rendered a $25,000 Visa bill. I'm like, oh, Mark, what's going on? It's like, yeah, I'll get it to you. But I mean, that's just the stuff that you always get to deal with, right? Like stuff like that, right?
Oh my God, yeah, yeah, that's pretty crazy. That was
That was funny. And they settle it up. There was
Oh,
no
of
issues.
course.
It
Well,
was just
see,
a forgotten thing.
their tour manager probably wasn't with them to follow them around to make sure. That was the problem.
Right.
You send the band out by themselves.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
what
that's a good idea.
Yeah.
All right, so you're Sum 41. What happens next?
So I do the first little run, and then the other guy finishes the tour, and then I get a call shortly after to go back out with them. So I won them over. So I went back out, and we did the rest of the album cycle, which went until the summer. So I mean, but we did a lot of stuff. I mean, we went to Japan. And we went to Australia, and we were in Indonesia, like Jakarta, did a show in Jakarta. So it was pretty exciting stuff. And so that went until the middle of 2009, I guess. And then, so that was over because they had finished their album cycle and they weren't doing anything else. So then I got a call from my now boss, Louis Thomas, who manages Matt Mays. And he said, is there any way you would be able to go on a 6-week tour with Matt Mays? Because he was going across Canada opening for Kid Rock in arenas. And none of the guys that had been with him at, around that time had worked in arenas before. So they just wanted someone with a little more experience. So I went out and I did that tour with Kid Rock, which was weird. And so that was, I think that might have been 6 weeks. It was pretty long. And then I got a call from the Chieftains management saying, can you come out and help us out for a couple of weeks? Because they hadn't really found a new guy that fit. So I flew right from Winnipeg. The Mays guys all were flying home, and I flew to Calgary and started with the Chieftains for 2 weeks. And then while I was on that tour, I got a call from Theory of a Dead Man's management to see if I wanted to be their tour manager. So I flew home, and then a couple days later, I flew to Thunder Bay and met Theory of a Dead Man and started on tour with them. Went to Sturgis, drove from Thunder Bay to Sturgis for the motorcycle rally. Went to see Kiss up on the hill.
Nice. And you with them, you did a lot of neat things. I remember you telling a lot of stories about that gig.
Then the neat thing about that gig was when I started with them, they were a bus and a trailer full of gear, like just a trailer just stocked with gear. Like you could barely close the back door. And as we were going, they had this record out that Scars and Souvenirs, the one with Bad Girlfriend on it. And it was selling, at a time when not that many things were selling, but it was selling like 20,000 units a week in the States. We were watching the charts and it would be in the top 20 and eventually it sold 1 million in the States, went platinum. And that changed a lot of things. So next thing, we have a tractor trailer. So all the gear's in a tractor trailer. So it's just a bus and they've never looked back. Once you have a tractor trailer to put your gear in, it's the best. You can fit weeks worth of merch in the front of the truck. You don't have to keep reordering it. And then, so I guess once they got to that point, then they were asked to open up for Motley Crue on the Saints of Los Angeles tour, which as I started the chat talking about Motley Crue. So got to go on tour opening for Motley Crue. And So the first gig was in San Diego, and their production manager, or I guess he was the stage manager at the time, Robert. He was mean, and he was like telling us, like we had these big set carts built, so we had all these cabinets on these massive set carts, and we had lights all strapped to them. And then he told us all the drums had to be attached to the drum riser so that we could get them down the ramp. Because he said you have 7 minutes to get all your gear off stage. Like 7 minutes. So anyway, we attached all the drums to the riser, and we figured out we moved where the legs were on the riser so it would fit down a 3-foot ramp, and we did it. And so we got to do the whole Motley tour, and it was fun. I got to meet Motley Crue and talk to them. I talked to Mick Mars all the time, and I talked to Nicky quite a bit, and it was exciting. It was work and everything, but at least I got to hang out with Nicky Six.
Yeah.
And so we did that tour. I can't remember how long it was. Like maybe 6 or 7 weeks seemed to be the norm for those kind of things. And then that summer, this would be 2009. I don't know. I got some of the years wrong, but it doesn't really matter. So this was 2009. We did the Crue Fest 2 tour, which was Motley Crue and Godsmack and Theory and what are the other bands? The Bullet with Your Name on It band, whatever they're called.
Oh, Bullet for My Valentine or whatever.
No. That was one of their songs.
Okay.
Like a real heavy.
But that would have been the infamous tour that all the stuff started happening between Godsmack, Sully and Nicky
Sully.
Six, right?
Yeah, it was weird to watch. It was really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And like Tommy would he had his own bus, obviously, with a big trailer full of choppers and all the bus bays. Like for us, because we're all in one bus, all the bays are full of luggage. But for Tommy, his bays were full of fireworks. So he's we'd be in these big amphitheaters in the States, and there are like 12 trucks and like 16 buses all over the place in these parking lots, and Tommy's there like blasting off fireworks all the time. And one night he had all these like sparklers in his hand to light the fireworks, and all the stuff had dripped down onto his hand and totally burned his hand. So he couldn't play drums for 2 weeks. So they had to get the guy from I don't know.
I remember hearing about that though.
Yeah, they had this guy subbing in for him. So it was weird. So I used to go to front of house and watch a lot of the shows. Especially, I like the intro of the show because they were doing on Crue Fest. They were doing the Dr. Feelgood album, like front to back, and then there would be a changeover. The set would totally change, and then they would do sort of a greatest hits set. So I used to go and watch the intro every night because it was pretty cool. And when Tommy hurt his hand, he'd be out in front of house like, oh yeah, and like pushing faders around and just totally getting in the way. The crowd of all these people. Yeah, he's an interesting dude.
So Nicky Six or Sully, I personally think Nicky wiped the floor with him, but that's just my personal opinion.
I think Sully's pretty fit, but he's a small guy.
Yeah.
Nicky's a pretty big guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. It was just weird. Sully was, I mean, he wasn't showing Nicky the respect that possibly Nicky deserved because, maybe Motley's not selling huge records at that point, but he's still Nicky Six.
He's Nicky Six, and that's the end of the story right there.
He's an icon. And I think Sully felt like they were selling more records, but in reality, Theory was selling more records than anybody on the tour. But we didn't say anything. In fact, I had to fire a bus driver who said that at catering one day with all the other bus drivers. He was saying that our bus should be closer because we were selling the most records. And I got called into the production office, and they were like, your bus driver's saying this stuff. And I was like, oh my God. So I had to fire the guy. And it was not good. And the worst part is we were in the middle of nowhere, and they couldn't get us another bus driver that night, so he had to actually drive us one more time after I fired him. It's a pretty rough drive.
Sounds like what I went through today, Mark.
Here's every pothole, fuckers. Here's every single pothole. That's right.
Yeah, that's what it is like.
All right,
So
so
you're doing
that
that
brings
Motley-
us. Go ahead.
Well, I just have one question. So you're doing the Motley Crue tour.
Yeah.
You know, and you mentioned production office and stuff. How, and I think, I don't want to mess up another story. I think you told me this, so I'm just going to ask it anyway. How active was a guy like, because I have to believe Nikki Sixx was hands-on in a lot of stuff. How active was he and all that?
No, he's definitely, everyone knows he's the boss, but he didn't, they had people whose job it was. Like the guy who I said was mean on the first tour, he was actually the production manager on the next tour. And he actually was really nice to us on the second tour because we'd sort of had earned his respect.
Sure.
So the first day he was like, oh, you can set up in the production office with everyone if you want. And I was like, oh, that's really nice. And I went in there and it was just chaos. There were so many people in there. And I was like, I'm just going to go to the theory dressing room and set my computer up in there. It's quiet.
You just break that stage in 7 minutes. That's pretty cool, though. I mean, that would have earned a lot of respect. You could figure out a way to get that stage struck in 7 minutes. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, because our stuff was so efficient with the stage, with the set carts and everything on the Crew Fest, what would happen is they would, and this is probably boring for people, but Motley Crue would set up and it would take all day. Like Mick's guitar world is, as big as the dining room I'm in here, but it was just massive. And then Godsmack would set all their stuff up in front, and they had 2 drum risers because they do that battling drum riser thing. Mm-hmm. Like one's off stage. And then because our stuff was so fast, then they would set up the other 2 bands and just leave like 8 feet or whatever of a gap. And then all my guys, all my backline guys and stage guys, everything, they'd all just be sitting on lawn chairs on the dock or on the back of our truck waiting, and they'd be like, okay, theory. And then our guys, they would just push the stuff, like the monitor rig would go across, then Guitar World for stage left, and then set cart, drum riser, set cart, Guitar World for the other side. And and then it took us, like, we would be set up in like 10 minutes at the most, and then when it was time for changeover, all we had to do was line check, make sure we had everything, and we were ready to go. It was good to be efficient, but it did make it so our guys were sitting on chairs on loading docks.
So you did theory for how long, Mark? How long did you do theory for?
I think I started with them in 2008. That's when I would have finished with Sum 41 Matinees. And then I worked with them right through until December 2009. Then we were on tour with Daughtry, Chris Daughtry, and all these like C market arenas in the United States. And it wasn't that fun of a tour. Chris was really nice and his band was really nice, but his tour manager was not nice to us for the whole tour. Like, he never became nice to us. So it just made it really awkward. He told us, we ran an intro tape, and after the first day, he's like, you can't run your intro tape. I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. And then the second day, he's like, you can't run your outro tape. I'm like, yeah. It's like, well, people think the show's over. I'm like, but they're here to see Chris Daughtry and he hasn't played yet. So why are they going to think the show is over? But anyway, whatever. So that was that kind of frustrating stuff. So I get a call from Louis Thomas, who is he owns Sonic Entertainment Group. And he was like, look, is there any chance you'd be interested in, coming to work at Sonic, being sort of like a senior production guy and talent buyer. And, I talked it over with Diane, and we just figured it was time for me to get off the road. I was turning 40. And, I'd started Cameras in Paris, I started when I was 18 or 19. And then I started working, professionally when I was 26, and now I was turning 40. It's like, it's a good amount of time. So, so I started working at Sonic, and so that's what I've been doing for the past 10 years.
Well, and you're not out of the business, you're just doing something different.
Yeah. I get along, I know a lot of the guys who come through, and I get along with guys who I don't know because I understand what it's like to be them.
Yeah.
And I don't take anything for granted. And yeah, talk about stuff and tell stories and have good rock shows.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, the one thing too, and well, you know this, but I'll say it again. I mean, so Mark books all kinds of different stuff. He gets all kinds of people calling him. I pride myself, I think twice. Actually, the first time you got me tickets to Steel Panther, I didn't ask. You just had them. You're like, do you want to go? But this past January was the funniest one. I'm playing in St. John, and out of the blue, my son says, "Is Mariana's Trench sold out?" And I'm like, "Way to ask me on the day of the show." But I sent Mark a text. No, there's still tickets. So I said, "Where does he buy them?" And Mark goes, "Well, you know what? I'll leave a couple of tickets for him at Will Call." Great. So I tell Zach to go do it. Anyway, Zach gets there, doesn't know what Will Call is, pays. I send Mark a text. Mark sends me a picture of Zach and his girlfriend getting his money back and going into the show. And I think the only reason that you would do something like that, because I don't ever ask you for free shit, right?
I don't mind. I don't mind helping people out, especially.
You know what though, man? I again, it's just I know you got tons of people always knocking on your door for stuff, and
Sure. I mean, GA shows are usually a little easier. Seated shows, it's hard.
Yeah.
GA shows. Funny thing. It's talking about Steel Panther was Darren brought me a Darionette to give to Satchel.
Oh yeah, nice.
He said it was an Eddie Van Halen, but he sort of modified it to be a Satchel one. So I give it to Satchel, and he loved it. And he's playing with it. And after the show in Moncton, he was in the dressing room, and he was actually shooting a video for Darren on his iPhone that he was going to put on YouTube, and the arm broke off the marionette.
Oh no!
He's like, "What?" So poor Darren, he didn't get the Satchel video, but he was trying to make it for him.
That's too bad.
Darren's a great guy. Yeah, he's a great guy.
Yeah.
But so that's a cool gig for you. See, you have that kind of misdemeanor now, or demeanor, I should say, not misdemeanor. That kind
Misdemeanor.
Sorry.
Felony.
Yeah, that kind of demeanor now, where like people can trust you. You're professional. You've done everything that they're doing. You understand all the ropes, so it's easy to talk to you about whatever it is that they're trying to book. So, was it a natural transition for you?
Yeah, it wasn't too bad. It was it's weird because you're looking at things backwards. But I mean, like I just like being at shows. I like going to shows. So it doesn't matter to me really even what I'm doing as long as I'm at the rock show. When I got to hang out with Judas Priest a couple years ago, like I was happy to be the promoter for Judas Priest.
Yeah.
I got to hang out with Judas Priest and the Scorpions.
So it's funny you mention that because I have a recurring theme as we and you and I have talked about this, but correct me if I'm wrong, you'd probably agree. Isn't it nice when you get to meet one of those heroes and they're not a dick?
Yeah, for sure. When Judas Priest showed up at the airport, I went out to meet them. I mean, we had transportation for them, but I went out anyway just to be nice. And it's winter time and it's cold out, and Rob Halford comes off the plane. He's wearing shorts and a t-shirt, no jacket. I'm like, Rob, it's pretty cold outside. And he's like, I don't care. I'm made of metal. I'm like, all right. That's exactly what Rob Halford should say to me right now.
Yeah.
And then Glenn Tipton was asking me if I knew anyone who could take him salmon fly fishing. I was like, what? You're one of the metal gods. What are you doing?
Yeah, that's
anyway,
right.
So I sent a message to Peter James. I was like, Peter, what's going on with salmon? He's like, salmon's over. You'd have to do, something else. I said, no, salmon runs over. Do you want to do something else? He's like, nah, I'm not going to stand in cold water unless I can get salmon.
Or you'd be standing on fucking ice, right?
Yeah.
That's hilarious. So, and I mean, obviously, there's probably been, and I won't put you on the spot, there's probably been some folks that'll let you down too, which is, I guess, human nature. But for the most part of it, if you can give me maybe your top three that you've dealt with that you just really enjoyed, not necessarily that you've worked with, but maybe that you've met.
Well, it's interesting. Well, I really enjoyed meeting Rob Halford because he was Rob Halford.
Yep.
And I really, well, I'm going to have to, I really liked meeting Elvis Costello. He was a cool dude. Like the Chieftains, I'll just tell a little quick story about this, but the Chieftains had done this record about the Irish immigrants to the United States. And one of the songs on it, Elvis Costello sang on the record. So we would do, we'd do this thing every night, and Patty, the main guy in the Chieftains, would say, on the record, this was sung by Elvis Costello. He's not here tonight. And people just got used to him saying that. So Kevin, the drummer, is going to sing it. So people got used to saying it. So this at Carnegie Hall, people had seen it before and heard it before. He says, this was sung by Elvis Costello on the record. And here he is, when the doors open and Elvis Costello comes out and the place goes crazy. But in the afternoon when we were sound checking, he's like, how does it sound out there? Like you're in a bar or something. He's like, sounds pretty good. It's Elvis Costello singing with the Chieftains in Carnegie Hall with a symphony orchestra.
That'll do. Yeah.
Yeah. What would have been classic if he had to start at the song that stopped it like he did on Saturday Night Live and called another tune.
Oh yeah, another tune. Yeah, that would have been good.
Okay, so that's two.
Nora Jones, because I only worked with her for short little periods of time, but I had a lot of respect for her because she came to realize the power that she wielded because of her success, but she wasn't like evil about it. She was like a benevolent deity, when at the end of after we were done working for the day, because we were doing a lot of promo stuff where we'd go and do TV shows or go to recording studios and do different things. And at the end of the day, she'd take everyone out to dinner, right? You just get whatever you want, doesn't matter. And we were sitting there at this restaurant on Sunset Boulevard, and the singer from Train's walking down the street, and she's like, oh my God, it's the singer from Train. I'm like, you're Nora Jones. Like, you're way more famous than that, dude. But anyway, that's what she was like. She was excited that the singer from Train was there.
That's cool.
And then another person who I worked with, that's one of my favorite people, is Roseanne Cash, who's Johnny Cash's daughter.
Mm-hmm.
She's I've worked with her a bit, tour managing and doing some sound sometimes, but she's just she's an amazing human being, and I was pretty honored to work with her. Actually, I got to stay at her house one night in New York City because all the flights were delayed, so they're just like, just stay here. Okay, sure. And I don't know. I can tell you, I met Nico McBrain.
Oh yes.
I saw you writing something about Nico recently, but when I was working for Sum 41, we had a night off in Toronto, and Iron Maiden was playing at the ACC there, the Air Canada Centre. And so the agent got us VIP'd, like on Steve Harris's guest list. Nice. And so we went in, went in the back door, like in the loading dock, and we walked right up on stage, before the show. And then we ended up watching the concert from the restaurant at the back, like below the boxes. And it was amazing. So I'm sitting there, it's like Sum 41 and me, and they start playing The Trooper, and I'm like jumping out of my chair and I'm looking over thinking they're going to think I'm an idiot, but they're doing it too because they loved Iron Maiden. And we were invited so we were talking to Nico and some of the guys backstage. It was crazy. And then we were invited to the after party at this bar. So I'm just sitting there, and like Dave Murray from Iron Maiden is standing like, COVID distance away from me at the bar. And he has a black leather jacket with the denim vest over it and tight jeans and boots on. It's like the most perfect thing ever. And I didn't even want to talk to him. I just wanted to sort of take in the fact that Dave Murray was there and like the other guys are over there. It was crazy. It was fun.
Don't say a word.
Well, because I tell you, as a drummer, it was always Clive Burr versus Nico McBrain, and I remember, and the reason why I posted that today because somebody else posted it. I was into Maiden, but when I heard the friggin' intro to Where Eagles Dare, I was just like,
Yeah, it's
and
changed.
you know, and just that whole song, man, the creativity of one kick drum and all the stuff that he was doing, and just, and I had the opportunity to meet him once, and I was 100% honest. He did disappoint. He was over the top, funny as friggin' hell. He was a nice guy. I remember him being a lot taller than me.
Yeah, he was very tall. Yeah.
Yeah, and just funny as hell, man. Funny as hell. So
Let me
we're
ask
actually
you a
going to
question,
have.
Mark. Go ahead.
Yeah.
No, go ahead, Sean.
No, it's all right.
I just want to ask you, so I know you have, what, 4 kids, right?
3 kids.
3, sorry. 3 kids.
Yeah.
So, I mean, is it kind of weird for you to be on the road with all these rock stars and country stars and just absolute, you know, stars and come home to be dad? Does it ever kind of freak you out a little bit sometimes, or?
Oh yeah, 100%. It was very difficult to, I mean, it's hard to be on the road for 7 weeks with Motley Crue and, you know, just like, it's just crazy. There's so many people, and like I'm, you know, talking to Mick Mars about amplifiers and guitars and all this stuff. And then I come home and it's like, well, it's time to go to soccer. You know, and I mean, and I love doing that stuff too, but it was just, it takes a little while to sort of transition from being tour manager to being dad. And that was, I mean, honestly, that was one of the reasons, the main reason probably why I ended up taking the job at Sonic was my son at the time was, you know, like little. He was a little guy, and he didn't really like know me that well because I'd go away for 6 or 7 weeks and come home for, you know, a couple of weeks and then go back out for 6 or 7 weeks. So, I mean, when I was working for the Chieftains, it was different because it was short little runs. And then I would just, you know, pick up 2 weeks with somebody here or 3 weeks or whatever, you know, just pick up things. But once I started working for Sum 41, in theory, like those guys go out for 7 weeks at a time. And 7 weeks is a long time. It's a long time. So, so I would come home and my son Nathan, he really wouldn't want to hang out with me or anything. And it was kind of painful, you know, it's a little hurtful. So when the opportunity came up for me to be more of a regular dad, where I could still be in the same business, you know, I took it, I jumped at it.
Yeah.
And people don't understand. It's our version of being in the Navy, really. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You don't really get that. I mean, you do have a lot of fun. I personally didn't like when I did it back in the day. I didn't like being away for 3-4 months at a time. I just don't sleep well in something that's not my own bed. But people don't get that. But the other weird thing, and we talk about this a lot on the show, you know, the musician thing is when you're away, you want to be home, and when you're home, you want to be away.
Sure.
You're always trying to find that balance.
Yeah.
And
somewhere in
it's
the
tough
middle,
for the spouse too. It's tough for the spouse. You know, like there's a whole. Can't wait for him to get home. It's like, oh God, he's home. And
well, you
can't wait
become
for
a
him to go.
disruption. You become a disruption to the routine of the home life when you come home. And you know, so I'm out for 7 weeks, and I'm in charge of everything. You know, I'm like, you know, I got hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash on me sometimes, and I'm, you know, just telling people what to do and everything. And then I come home, and it's sort of like, you know, I just sit down and get out of the way because things have been carrying on without me. So I can't just come in and come back and say, oh yeah, I'm gonna.
Diane's like, take it to garbage. It's like, I don't do that. That's not my fucking job.
Yeah, I have guys for that. And it's like, oh no, I'm not.
Yeah, we're
that guy.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Man.
So I tell you, this has been a lot of fun, and I know we got a late start here, but I'm glad we finally did this because I mean, you and I've known you for a long time.
Yeah.
We briefly got to play together for a little bit and stuff, and it's always you know, it's weird. You and I connect in weird spots. It's usually around music, but it's like something weird happens and you call me or vice versa. And, so we do have to make a point to hang out again soon when all this friggin' shit finally does get flying again.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And you're having fun with the
Awesome.
band. I know you're playing the band too, right?
Oh, the band. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. You know, we have Michelle Ryder, who you interviewed,
Oh,
great
we love
singer.
Michelle.
Yeah. So we have Michelle and Rick, and you know, two strong singers, male and female, and then it, and then so I get to sing with them. Like, you know, we have all these 3-part harmonies that are really great because it doesn't matter how good I am, because the other 2 parts are super strong. So I can come squeak my part in there, and it sounds pretty good. You know, it's a lot of fun. We have Doug McKay playing drums, like really,
Beast.
yeah, and Bane, who the band Bane,
Yeah.
he you know, he plays bass and he owns all this gears. And I mean, he missed it back in the day when everyone had big shows and everything. So he's
Yeah.
sort of doing it now. He has a PA and lights and digital board and monitors, you know, 6 monitor mixes on stage and everything.
Wow.
So it's pretty
Wow.
fun. All my gear goes into a big road case and gets pushed into a trailer, so I don't have to worry
Wow.
about it getting wrecked or anything.
Well, and it's funny. Rick's actually my neighbor, but I do business with Rick, and I had no idea. We just happened to be at some friggin' random hockey auction. I wound up at Monty's, and his band was playing there for about 4 people. And he's up on stage, and I'm like, "Who the frig?" I look up, and it's Rick. I'm like,
Oh,
"Shit!"
was that
And
the
I mean,
Deadbeats?
that's who it was. Yeah. And what a friggin' singer! And I mean, I knew he was a very good hockey player back in the day, but what a great singer! And he's got such a funny, dry sense of humor.
Yeah, he's a good
You know,
guy.
he's just like I don't know. I don't even know who you compare him to, but you're sitting there talking to him. He'll just say something that's absolutely hilarious, and he's got this look on his face like it's not even funny to him.
Oh, yeah.
I got tears streaming down my face, but
Yeah.
yeah. So
Well, the
we'll have
fun
to get out
thing,
and see you guys.
for sure. I mean, eventually, but
Yeah.
the fun thing about Bane Band for me is that we're doing songs that you don't really hear people play. Like, you know, we're doing like foreigner tunes and you know, lots of like 70s FM radio rock songs that you know, those are be the songs I heard on the radio when I was in junior high
Right.
and high school. And so that's we're doing a lot of stuff, not all of it, but that's a, you know, pretty significant portion of it. So that's fun for me. You know, it's just
Yeah,
different.
for sure. For
You
sure.
get tired of playing.
And God love Michelle. God love Michelle, because the night we interviewed her, I was helping somebody out over at it was at Goresbrook Junior High, and I was trying to like get on the Wi-Fi, so I was like moving around like crazy. It was but she was a trooper, and she's got to know her a little bit. She's a lot of fun.
And we had Bane on too. We had to do an interview with Bane, but we haven't actually showed. Well, I don't even know if I can even show the interview because Sean and I were pushing hard for the government, for whoever the entity was, to loosen up these whole restrictions for COVID, because this sounded like a great event. And anyhow, we never shared the interview because, well, it didn't happen, the gig, right? So we were kind of pro Bane, right?
Yeah, I mean, Banefest is pretty fun. It's, you know, it's 2 days. He has this big lot up in River John on the water, and people come and they camp, like all these motor homes and everything. And you know, he sets up a stage in a tent, and there's full production, and all these bands play all day, and you know, his bathroom facilities, and people are selling food, and his security. It's quite a thing for you know, just him and his partner Marie to put on, you know.
We were pretty excited about it. He gave us an invitation when Sean and I had our own RV, and it was like, holy God, this sounds like a pretty good gig, right? But
yeah. Well, maybe next year it'll happen.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it. Speaking of next year, look, I can't even thank you enough, Mark, for being on the show, man. Like, this has been, I thought I knew you, and we played the band together for a little while, but it's like, geez, there's a whole lot more to it than I knew, right? Kids went to gymnastics together.
I've been a busy boy.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Like,
Sure.
We thank you so much. And, you know, I guess, again, it's another reason why, I mean, the Maritime folks have such a stake in music and entertainment, because they work hard and they play hard and they contribute a lot. So thank you very much, brother.
Well, thank you. Glad to be part of it.
Yeah, man. We'll be in touch about something real soon.
Sounds good.
All right, brother.
All right, take it easy.
Take care.
Ciao.
Bye.
All right, man. I gotta get out there. Dude.